Thank you so much indeed, Rami, for your time. Do you think this resolution is going to pass? There seems to be some doubt. Hamas apparently wrote to the Algerian government and said, please vote against it.
Well, Adnan, this is a very decisive phase now in an ongoing diplomatic negotiation and struggle, in a way, that's been going on for the last 3-4 months, in which the United States and Israel are trying to impose their will on the next phase of developments in Gaza, to have Israel hold about half the territory itself and to control what goes in and out, to keep killing Palestinians but at a slightly lower pace, and to determine the future in terms of international forces, rebuilding, etc. Countering this is a serious move by Palestinians and their many supporters around the region, including Turkey, Pakistan, Qatar, Egypt, etc., and others. And so there's a real diplomatic tug of war going on now, and it's now today in the Security Council. This is critical because any decisions made on the next steps in Gaza, governance, policing, development, aid, any decision on how Gaza proceeds from now on must have international approval in the eyes of the Palestinians and all of its many supporters around the world. The Israelis and Americans would like to dictate the terms themselves, but this is really significant and new, that there is a counterforce now to the American-Israeli position. And unlike 1930 and 1940 and 1970, the Western powers who are close to Israel cannot just dictate what they want without some pushback. And this pushback doesn't come in one decisive move. So what we have here is an American Security Council proposal that many people rejected and created a negotiating process that forced the Americans to revise the proposal and to include in it a soft reference to the possibility of Palestinian statehood. This is a small move, but it's a gesture that's important to understand. So whether the resolution passes or not is less important than how close the two sides are getting in terms of finding that middle ground that respects the rights and obligations of both sides. And there's no answer to that because the basic trends of the last 2 years continue. The Israelis are killing Palestinians, limiting aid that comes in, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a very important moment, I think, and the diplomatic battle is one where the Palestinians and the Arabs and their many supporters around the world have a little bit more leverage than they used to have when it was only military power on the American-Israeli side, supported by some European colonial powers, when the military forces dictated events.
Yeah, really interesting, Rami, that you called it a kind of a soft nod to Palestinian statehood, because that's the way it reads. It says conditions may be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. So you've made a distinction here between the politics that's happening now, but what about the practicalities of this plan? Because nobody at the moment seems to know whether this international stabilization force will be there to keep the peace, or whether it will actually have to disarm Hamas. And you can imagine how difficult that might be for a foreign soldier.
Yes, absolutely. And this is why the parties supporting Hamas and the Palestinian people, really, not just Hamas, they want a movement forward diplomatically and politically and changes on the ground that is both legitimate in the eyes of international law and also effective and gives the Palestinians hope. And the Palestinian bottom line, which Hamas has represented for many years now, the bottom line remains the same. They want full Israeli evacuation, an end to the Israeli genocide, releasing Palestinian prisoners, and allowing the Palestinian people, not just Hamas, but the Palestinian people themselves, to define how to govern and redevelop Palestine in a way that's acceptable internationally and fair to everybody in the region, including fair to Israel, in the sense that there will be commitments not to attack Israel while this is going on. I mean, that's the best we can hope for. So I think we should not expect to see any dramatic, sudden movements, but we should see these incremental steps as part of the really critical heart of the diplomatic give and take, in which the Israeli-American position gets closer to the Palestinian, Arab, and international, especially the Islamic countries like Indonesia and Pakistan and other Turkey who support the Palestinians. As those move closer together, there may be then a position in the middle, a compromise position that's fair to everybody and reasonable and can be implemented. The Israelis are adamant. They don't want Turkish troops involved in the stabilization force. They don't want any mention of a Palestinian state. They don't want any mention of Israel full withdrawal. If that's the case, then this is going nowhere. But I think that's not the case. I think what we're seeing is there's a global really demand, including among many Americans, to end this struggle, not just the genocide in Gaza, but the bigger Arab-Israeli conflict, to end it diplomatically, which is a big task, but it can be done. But they want to really move ahead, and we're starting to see signals from some sides in the West, some sides from the Middle East, that they're willing to move closer together. That's how diplomacy works. Any of these conflicts that have been resolved diplomatically in South Africa, in Northern Ireland, and other places have been resolved with these slow incremental movements to getting closer to each other. But the central pillar of that is that the Israelis and the Palestinians must be treated as human beings and political entities that have equal rights that need to be implemented simultaneously, so that the Israelis and the Palestinians can both look forward to living in a situation of peace, justice, and security that is internationally guaranteed. And that's where the Security Council comes in.
Rami, we always appreciate the analysis.